So we're going into our next section of the video. So like I was saying, before you start to make your summary, you're really going to want to think about how you're going to introduce this. So this is very important, particularly when we get to our research papers, is our first sentence should always introduce what we're talking about. We can introduce this in a variety of ways. So if I want to be someone who's acting like an MC who wants to introduce the water cycle or the hydrologic cycle as it's called, I'm going to want to be more upbeat. So I would say, how would I say this if I were an MC? I'm not an MC, I'm a teacher, but I'm going to try and be an MC right now. So I would say, I would like to introduce the main player in the rain that we get here, that we get in Chicago. So some of you are probably laughing right now. I'm kind of laughing too. I would never say it this way, but if you would like to say it that way, you can. In Chicago, the hydrologic cycle, or as he is usually known, the water cycle. So that's my first sentence. I'm already one sentence down. All I need is 4 to 5 to introduce this topic and talk a little bit about it. So I would like to introduce the main player in the rain that we get in Chicago, the hydrologic cycle, or as he's usually known, the water cycle. So how am I going to introduce this? Should I go back into evaporation, condensation, and precipitation? No, that's a little too wordy. I'm just going to say he's the main reason, or it's the main reason, as it does not have a gender. But if you want to assign it one, you can. You can be a little playful with it. It's the main way that water gets around, up in the sky, the ground, the oceans, even in the snow, because water's made of snow. Snow's made of water, even in the snow. And then you could talk about how it starts. It starts with evaporation, as we saw in our little chart down here that we copied and pasted right here. Evaporation, the water's going up. It starts with evaporation, which, if we look at the detail we got, is when water turns into a gas. When water turns into a gas and goes up into the sky. Then, next, because next is like it's step by step, and since the cycle is usually a step by step thing, we can always use that language. Next, let me see, the water, we got moving through the earth, okay. It condenses. Next, the water condenses, which is another word for condensation. But if you just want to use condensation, you can. The water turns into condensation, meaning that gas turns back into a liquid, like liquid water. Lastly, or you could say finally, whatever. Finally, main man, the hydrologic cycle. How would I say this? Brings rain down, or snow. It's Chicago, it's crazy. Chicago is crazy. We never know what we get. Oh, what we get exactly. Again, don't worry so much about spelling. If you're just trying this out for the first time, you can always go back and correct it later. You got plenty of time to do this. I want to keep things really well written. Hydrologic cycle brings rain down or snow. Chicago's crazy. We'll never know what we get exactly in the form of precipitation. And precipitation is just the water coming back down. So that's basically how we're going to do this. Oh, I misspelled it. It's a really good thing this is on a Google Doc too, because it can autocorrect for you. So now let's count our sentences before we move on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 sentences. And this just is a brief explanation of the hydrologic cycle. So we did our 3 reads. 1, I skimmed through some articles. 2, I read a little more deeply. I underlined or highlighted, in this case, some stuff. And then I looked through it a little more thoroughly. And I also went to weather.org. And when I couldn't find what I wanted there, I decided to go to Google. And remember, if you're looking up additional sources, you're going to want to rely on graphs and charts, scientific data, things with numbers and dates, things that have been observed. So if you cannot observe a water turning into a gas, which I'm sure we all can if we're like boiling water on a stove, you're not likely going to consider that a fact. If it's like water doesn't boil, that's an opinion. Can you disprove it? Yes, you can. Can you prove water boils? Yes, and boiling is a form of evaporation as well. And when you leave a steamy bathroom and the steam's in there, that steam turns back into little droplets of water. That's why our mirrors are wet when we go back inside. So that's one way that we're getting through our cycles. So then we have sun cycle, air cycle, things again that we can look up, geologic cycle. Global warming and atmosphere, again, we can use the same method we just did for the hydrologic cycle. Renewable resources are probably a little trickier because there is a vast number of renewable resources. So if you can just look up some, list the details of them, and talk about them briefly and what their purpose is, you should be fine with that. Same thing with plastic waste and pollutions or solutions for plastic waste, effects of non-renewable resources, ocean currents. So again, this has to do with water moving through the earth. Heat, cold also goes in the oceans. And you'll actually see that through the hydrologic cycle one. The first time we see that, it does talk about the oceans. Effect of global warming on animals, ocean animals in particular, deserts affected by them, tundra, polar ice caps. These things are called biomes, that's actually listed in here as well. So a biome, for those of you who were not here the last day, are places in like certain environments where only certain parts of certain life can live. So this word biome right here, the word bio means life. And the MES is just to show us that life exists in these particular places. So these, again, are things you can look up on Kids National Geographic, possibly the weather one as well. It'll show you what the average temperature year-round is in these certain environments. When we come back, we're actually going to be studying biomes back in the classroom before we move on to our full-blown research project for this. Otherwise, your next goal here is you're going to take 3 topics that you felt very deeply for during this project. And again, you're just going to practice it again. Select 3 topics that interest you. Once you've selected them, conduct another search, meaning do another search. You do not have to delete your current research, but you're probably going to want to look for a more reliable source. If you want to continue using the sources I provided, you're more than welcome to. But now that you really want to invest in these 3 topics, you should get more research about them. So you do not need to use full sentences right here, but don't use less than 3 words. You try to use a full sentence at least. So let's say I do choose the hydrologic cycle. I'm going to want to say it is about how water moves through the earth. So I know that, and I can list my words for that: evaporation, condensation, precipitation. Again, don't care about spelling right now. You can also do autocorrect as long as I can tell what you're saying. You don't have to worry about that right now. So that's pretty much what my summary was about. But now I might be like, how is the hydrologic cycle comparable, or how is it related to global warming? So I could always do a search on that, or I could even go back to National Geographic and look up global warming or hydrologic cycle. But I'm just going to use Google right now because we're going to be doing research on other reliable sources. So I can say, how is the water cycle affected by, and that even popped up right there. Do you see that? By global warming. How does global warming affect the water cycle? And I even have a reference right here, helpsavenature.com. So that could actually be a very reliable source. So I'm actually going to click on that link. It says page not found. Oh, wait. So sad. This is why we have to look. But this page right here, it says, according to researchers, global warming is interfering with the water cycle, altering the distribution of available water. The increase in Earth's temperature causes an acceleration of the water cycle. So some places experience more storms and floods, and some have long periods of droughts. So that's valuable information. I'm going to say the more global warming speeds up the cycle and causes more storms and more droughts. And I'm definitely going to want to copy and paste my source here. So even though this one, if I can't exactly find the source, because like we just saw that is it's not used right now, we can just copy and paste that right here. So I'm definitely going to suggest you copy and paste your sources. So I need 2 more details. So if it says it's causing more storms and droughts, maybe I want to learn more about these droughts. And if I keep looking down, here's a good link. This is actually from NOAA. It's actually a place that studies the oceans and the weather circulation around the oceans. So I can click on this, see if it's available. NOAA Ocean Explorer Education. Earth's average global temperature is increasing. It's risen by 1 Fahrenheit in the last century. I'm going to keep reading and reading and reading. Weather events, number. So it says right here, global warming intensifies the movement of water through the cycle because many of the processes involved are temperature dependent. So that's a very important thing I'm going to want to look up. The cycle is temperature dependent. And I'm going to put a question mark. Does that mean hot or cold? Because that could be important. We won't know just yet. And I'm going to copy and paste my link right here. I'm going to want to go and look at it later. Because who knows? I might need to use this link again. And this is going to come up again later in another video, but .gov means that it's a government-affiliated website. So there are research programs under the government that we actually can trust. So maybe I don't want to look for a 5th detail right now about the hydrologic cycle. I'm going to look up the one more. Maybe I can look for another one in this this article. Interdependent relations between global warming and the water cycle. Oh, so these images, okay. Sea level. A common concern is that global warming will melt the planet's ice caps and drown the land. Again, the water cycle. The ice is melting. So I might want to do some research on the polar ice caps. The water cycle is affected by global warming because the polar ice caps are melting. How does this connect with the cycle? So that's something I'm going to want to look into. And you're going to do the same thing for your other 2 topics. Then you're going to write a summary. You're going to say what your topic of interest is. For my case, it was the hydrologic cycle. For you, it might be something else. Tell me what it describes. So hydrologic cycle is movement of water through the earth. If yours is global warming, say it describes the increase in temperature, or if it's a biome, this describes how global warming affects the tundra, something of that. Then you're going to write your summary in a similar way that you did up here when you were just introducing it very briefly. Again, using your details and sources. Remember to list your sources, copy and paste them right in there. And that should be about the end of it until you get to the topic that interests you most out of the 3. I want you to explain why it interests you. So this doesn't have to be fact dependent. Just tell me why it interests you. So the reason water interests me, and your reason can be silly. It's something that interests you. I'm a Pisces. Pisces are a water sign. I am a water sign and would like to know more about how water affects the earth and how it affects the earth. I would like to know about the oceans and how they are affected. Also, how is this related to global warming? And again, any details you gathered about this topic relating to global warming, you can list here. You don't have to do full sentences, just list them. And then you're going to complete a KWL chart, what you know about your topic, what you'd like to know, and what you learned, because this is going to guide your research in the long run, especially when you come back to class. All right, so I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. Remember to wash your hands. Have a good day.